Filter context happens to be one of the most important and fundamental concepts in Power BI. If you have tried to move beyond the drag and drop visuals and try to do anything remotely sophisticated, you have to jump and understand this wall of filter context. Now at the start, when you're understanding filter context with simple scenarios, it is going to look like ridiculously simple. But once you layer this up with multiple virtual tables, complex business logic, this becomes a really hard concept to master. In this video, I'm going to take you through various stages of understanding filter context, and every single stage is going to become slightly more complicated than the previous one. You're going to have fun watching this video to understand what filter context is, how do you design your own customized filter context, and use them in practical business applications. Let's start. All right, to begin with, what exactly is a filter context? So filter context, if I have to explain you in the simplest possible language, it is nothing but a set of filters applied to your calculation. That is nothing but filter context. Now, obviously that English definition does no good of really applying it to your data and in Power BI. So let's just take a look at our first example and the most simplistic case study and understanding of filter context. Let's just start with a very simple example where we're just working with one single table and that's about it. So here's my sales table with a bunch of columns in here. The granularity of the sales table is one row equals to one single transaction. You can see that we have a region column in here, and using that column, let me just make a very simplistic visualization, which is where I'm trying to find out that every single region had how many unique dates of sales. So I'm going to go off to my visual right here. I've already built the visual. We have the region and we have a measure called unique dates. Now, obviously you get the answers, and against East, I'm taking a look at 1022 unique days. North is 1110, so on and so forth. But where does the filter context come into play right here? So if you take a look at the first number, which is the calculation 1022, this 1022 is nothing but the output of the filter context, which is region equals to East. Only when this filter is applied, region equals to East, you get this particular output, which is 1022. Like I said, this is a very simplistic concept to understand, but generally speaking, any single calculation in Power BI is going through three stages in which the calculation is evaluated, and that's how you get to see any answer in Power BI. So let's just try to replicate the mind of Power BI and how DAX calculations are evaluated, through which you will obviously understand the filter context. Now, the first stage that happens when any calculation is evaluated is that the filters on that calculations are picked up from the visual and are applied to the table. So if you take a look in this cell, no matter what number is displayed in this particular cell, there is a filter on this cell, which is where region equals to East happens to be a filter. Now this filter, which is region equals to East, is going to be picked up. It's going to be applied to your sales table, which is where I'll apply the filter region equals to East, and the data is going to get shorter or filtered. And once you have the shorter data, or region equals to East, only then this particular DAX calculation, which is the unique count of the order date, is going to be triggered only on the filtered data, and that is my stage number 2. So once the data is filtered, this is going to be taking a look at this particular column, remove the duplicate dates, count the distinct dates only. That completes my stage 2. Once DAX has generated an answer, that answer is then transferred back to the visualization, and that answer is nothing but 1022. A real quick way of checking your calculation if it is matching or not matching is to first take the data, which is your filtered data. I've already applied a filter to the region East. Let me just go ahead and apply the filter. Let's say region equals to East. Click on OK, and this is all the East data. Now if I just go ahead and take all of these order dates, Control C on that, and maybe in a new spreadsheet paste them right here, and if I now do a unique count of all of these dates, I am going to get that number. So let's just do a unique function right here real quick. Unique of all of this particular column, close the bracket, and now I'm just going to do a count of all of these values. So count of all of these values, and that actually gives me 1022, and that was also the answer that you took a look at in Power BI, which is 1022. So three stages to remember. First, the filters are applied to your data. On the filtered data, the DAX calculation starts to work and performs a calculation. That calculation results into an answer, and that answer is then transferred back to your visualization. That is a simple three-stage process that derives any particular calculation in Power BI. And it obviously starts with identifying the filter context and applying it to your data. If you're enjoying this video so far, I'd like to give a big shout out about my courses on Power BI, especially DAX, modeling, and the M language. I teach them in a very structured way. I try to give you the logic of understanding the problem, deconstructing the problem, and then framing the solution of the problem. That logic helps you to understand the problem at hand that we're doing in the course. Not only that, but you can then take the logic and apply it to your own cases as well, which is going to tremendously boost your confidence of solving your own data problems. Hundreds of students have joined my courses and they have benefited a lot. In case you're interested, the link is down in the description. Go back to the video. As the next stage, let's just increase the complexity a slight bit and introduce two tables in Power BI, which is where we have the sales table as my fact table. And we have the products table on the one side, which is nothing but my dimension table. And using this particular relationship, I've also linked the two columns, which is the product key right here and the product key right here. That's a classic one-to-many relationship. All right, now my question remains the same. So if I just go ahead and take a look at my visual, in here I have chosen the category, and our category obviously is coming from the products table, and the region is coming from my sales table. And against a certain category and against a certain region, I want to see that how many unique days of sales are there, which is nothing but the unique count or the distinct count of the order date column in the sales table. And the answer right now is 396. But let's just forget about the answer. Let's just run the DAX evaluation process or the filter context once again. So no matter what calculation happens to be in this particular cell, but first, the filter context of this cell is going to be identified and then applied to the data. And if you take a look here, we have not one, but two filter contexts. The one is going to be region equals to East, and then the category equals to accessories. Now, these two filter contexts are going to be applied. Now, if you just for a quick second, take a look at your sales table. The sales table obviously has the region and we can apply the filter to the region, but it doesn't have the category of the product. So how am I going to really apply the filter to the category of the product? So here is exactly what happens in Power BI. Now, because you have built that relationship in Power BI using this one-to-many relationship, the filter is technically applied to the category column in the products table only. And then through this particular relationship, it is then transferring all the product keys to this particular table. Let me just show it to you real quick. So if I just go to the products table, in the products table, I go ahead and apply the filter for accessories. I click right here, click on OK. Now, accessories are now showing up all the product codes that belong to a certain category of products. So all of these product keys, they actually belong to this particular category called accessories. Now, what is going to happen in reality is that all of these product keys are going to travel through the relationship from this column and try to filter this particular column, which is the product key column in the sales table, all of those accessory product keys. Once that filter is applied, then another filter is going to be applied, which is region equals to whatever region that we saw there. That filter is going to be applied here, and all the product key filters are going to be applied here, which belong to accessory. The sales data is going to become shorter, and on that shorter data, this particular column, order date column, is going to be running with that DAX calculation, which is nothing but a unique count or distinct count of the order date. And that is actually going to give you this particular number, which is 396, and that is what you see out there in the visualization as well. Now, if you really want to test it out, you can actually write a VLOOKUP in your sales table, get all the categories, apply the filter, apply the region filter, and then do a distinct count of the date. You are actually going to be landing up with this right answer. All right, let's just raise the complexity and try to work with two dimension table and one fact table. And let's just see if anything changes when we try to apply a reverse filter condition on our data. Let me help you understand what do I mean. So we obviously have the calendar table right here, and this is linked through the date and the order date right here. And we have the products table right here, and then you've seen we've linked that through using the product key right here and the product key right here. Now, I would want to build a visual something like this, which is where I have the year. This is obviously from the calendar table. I have the region, obviously from the sales table, and we have the quarter as well, which is obviously again from the calendar table. Now, against the year and the quarter and the region, what I'd like to be able to find out that how many unique subcategories were sold. If you take a look at the flow of the relationship, it's going to be something like this. If I just go over to the model view right here, I have two filters coming from my calendar table, which is the year and the quarter filter. And these two filters can obviously come down and filter my sales table, because you can take a look at the filter direction. And I can obviously apply the filter on the region as well. But the calculation that I'm trying to do is going to be in the products table. That means that I am trying to find the unique count of the subcategories sold in right here. So how do I actually do that? Because I would want to take the distinct count of this particular column. Let's just see how that is going to work, and I'll help you understand that how the filter context is designed in such scenarios. So if I just go ahead and open up my measure, you can take a look. The measure is right now blank, and I'm just going to zoom in a bit. So I would want to write something like, hey, take the distinct count of the subcategory column in the products table. I close the bracket, I press enter, and I get 37 all across. That means no matter which region I have, no matter which year I have, no matter which quarter I have, I continually see the very number 37 all across. Now this obviously is not right. First, let's just identify that why is this behaving this particular way and what can we do to solve this. Now let's just identify any particular filter. Let's just pick up the first one. So here, for any number to appear in the current cell highlighted, we need three filters. We need the year filter, we need the quarter filter, and we need the region filter. So let's just go ahead and apply these filters. So the year filter and the quarter filter are going to be applied to the calendar table. The calendar table is going to get shorter, and that year and that quarters, all the dates that are belonging to that year and belonging to that quarter are then going to flow through this relationship and come and filter my order date column. That is the first step. Now, after that, the second filter is applied, which is nothing but the region filter. Now, these are not layered filters. They don't apply one after the other. These are AND filters, and all of these filters are applied at once. So region filter is applied, which is region equals to east, I believe, and that filter is going to be applied. Now, the sales table has become shorter. The sales table only belongs to a certain region. It only belongs to a certain quarter and certain year. Now, this shortened sales table, the problem is that that shortened sales table cannot flow in a reverse direction and try to filter this particular table. That means the filter direction is coming downwards. It's this way. It's not the other way around. So these filters cannot be applied. And therefore, once the filters are not applied on the products table, the products table stays unfiltered. That means no filters, so the entire table. And the distinct count of the entire table, the products table, is nothing but 37. So this particular column, if you do not apply any filters, it's going to give you the value 37. So let's just take a look. So if I just go over to the products table right here, in the products table, I remove the filters, so clear all the filters. And if I take a look at the subcategory, I am actually going to see 37 values right here at the bottom. You can see that we have 37 distinct values. And because the table is unfiltered, no filters were passed on to the products table, therefore you see 37 all across, and that's how this number is evaluated. Now this number is obviously kind of not right. This is not what you would want. So I would want to apply reverse filters. That means I want to alter the filter direction. So I want to take these filters, the year and the quarter filter, from here to here, and the region filter from here. All of these filters I would want to take back to my products table through the product key column and apply the filters and find out that how many unique subcategories were there. Now in this case, we can apply reverse filters either by expanded table concept or by using the cross filter function. Let me show you the cross filter function. So I'm going to go back to this particular measure and I'm going to say, hey, I am continuing to do the distinct count calculation. That doesn't change. I still want to do distinct count, but I'm trying to beat the filter and I'm trying to apply a cross filter between the sales table product key column and the products table product key column, and the filter direction is going to be both. That is what I will say, and I'll close the bracket in the end, and you will not start to see that the numbers change. That means if you literally took the filter for, let's say, Q3 and East and 2016 and applied those products, those filtered products in the sales table to the products table, you're going to land up with only 2 unique subcategories of products. And that's how you kind of solve the reverse filter problems in Power BI. Let's raise the bar further and try to modify the filter context. At the moment, the calculations that we have seen are mostly flowing from the visuals and filtering either the fact table or the dimension table or crisscross filters. Now, there are going to be a lot of times when you would want to write your own filter context. That means you would want to modify the filter context. You want to overwrite what the visual is saying and design your own context. Let me try to help you understand. So if you take a look at the visual right here, we have the year and the month, and we have the total sales right here. But I want to find out the monthly sales mix. That means I want to take this particular value divided by the total, and I would want to find that what has been the month's contribution in the entire year. To be able to do that, if you think about it, I'm trying to work with 2 numbers. I'm trying to work with this number, which I have it in the cell, which contains 2 filters, 2016 and the month of July. And then the next filter that I would want to work with is this particular filter, which is the entire year's filter. So if somehow I'm able to bring this number right here in the adjacent cell, I'm able to solve the problem. Now, to be able to solve problems in Power BI, you need to understand that what filters are they working against. The first cell is working against two filters, 2016 and the month of July. The second number, which is the total of the entire year, is working against just one filter, which is the year filter of 2016, so on and so forth. So here in the first calculation, I would want to retain two filters, 2016 and July. In the second calculation, which is technically this particular number, I do not want the month filter. I in fact want to remove the month filter and just retain the year filter. So how do we do? So what we are going to do is we're going to start to cancel out the filters which are applied by the visual or your pivot table. Let's just see how that works. So I'm going to go over to my sales table and start to create a contribution measure. Now the contribution calculation goes something like this. I'm going to go ahead and say something like, hey, I already have the sales of the current year, which is nothing but total sales, but I'm trying to get the sales of the entire year, which is this particular number. And this number can only be arrived if I happen to remove any of the month filters and only applied the year filter, just retained that filter. So let's just try to remove the filter from the month. So I'm going to go ahead and say something like, hey, I'm trying to find out I'm trying to find out my total sales. Now I'll just try to remove the filters. So I'll say remove filters. And the filters that I want to remove are the month, which is my first filter. And the second filter that I want to remove is the index filter because months are sorted by the index. I close the bracket and I press enter. And if I drag this formula onto my visualization, you're going to see that I get this particular value against the entire year's data. So against Jan, I get the contribution, not the contribution, technically the year total. Against Feb, I get the year total, so on and so forth. And once the number starts to appear, which is against the month of July, I get to see the total of the month of the entire year as well. And now that we have the total number for every single month, we can just do the divide sign. That means this number divided by this particular number. Let's just go revise our calculation. To be able to revise our calculation, I'm going to use the divide function and I'll say, hey, I'm trying to divide the two numbers, which is total sales, and I'm trying to divide it by the calculate function, which removes the filter from the month. I close the bracket and I press enter, and if I just convert that to a percentage sign, this is going to be good to go. Now this is where what we have been able to do is modify the filter context through the calculate function. That means not only sometimes your filters are going to come from the visualizations, but a lot of times you're going to be making, maneuvering and modifying filters using the calculate function or howsoever. Now calculate is not the only function that can modify the filters. You can also modify filters using all except. There are other functions around that as well, but calculate is just an enabler to do that. So here we have used the remove filters function to remove the filters from the month and the index, and then calculate the total sales and then divide that by the total sales right here to actually give us the contribution. The next very strange behavior that happens in filter context is when you design a visualization in such a way and the calculate function in such a way that the filters start to clash with one another. Let me try to help you understand what I'm trying to do here. So I've already got the total sales measure right here, and alongside the total sales I've also written a West sales measure. Let's just take a look at the measure real quick. So if you take a look at the West sales measure, all that I'm saying is that, hey, I still want to do the total sales calculation, but I would like to apply the filter which is region equals to West, and obviously whatever is the West number, that number, I get to see that number everywhere in my pivot table. Now it seems to be a bit weird behavior, especially when you see the West sales number, which is this number, against North as well, against East as well, so on and so forth. It seems a bit weird. Now this is done because you have built a clashing pivot table. So what you're saying is that something like this. In here, any cell that appears right here or right here is going to have the filter for the region. That means on your sales data, the region column is going to be filtered down to only the East value or the E value. Now, but the problem is that you wrote a clashing filter inside of your calculate function, and you are saying that, hey, I want the region to be the West. Remember, whenever you have written a clashing filter that is there in your visualization and that is there in your calculate function, the clash will always go in favor of the calculate function. So calculate function has the ability to override this particular filter, apply its own filter, and then pass on the value off to the visual right here. And this is also something called as context modification. We just saw that a while ago, which is where we canceled out the month filter and applied the entire year's filter. But this is just another way where I was just trying to make it explicit that a lot of times you'll be designing these kind of filters. Now at the moment, this pivot table doesn't make sense, and this is just done for demonstration purposes. But later in this video, I'll talk about that when is there a need to make clashing filters. But remember, if the filter written in the calculate function clashes with the filter in the visualization, the calculate filter will win over any filters coming off from the visuals. That's the basic fundamental that you need to understand. Let's just move over to my last example and raise the complexity bar all the way up and design our own customized filter context. Now this example is a small case study of its own, and you're going to enjoy this a lot. So let's just take a look. So here we have two filters, which is the year filter and the quarter filter. And against that we have total sales, right? So imagine the two filters are coming off from the calendar table. They're applying the filters to the sales table, and then the sales is calculated for that particular quarter. Now, I would want to find out that what are the top 3 selling products in this particular quarter. That means whatever products were sold in that quarter, this is the total sales for that. I want to be able to find out that what is the sales of the top 3 products in the quarter, and I want the sales only for that right here. Now, how do we do such a calculation? So I'm going to say something like this. I'm going to say, hey, I am trying to find out the calculate, and I'm trying to find out the total sales, which is that, and actually total sales, and I'm trying to apply a customized filter, which I'm trying to design, which is where I don't want to take a look at all the products. I just want to take a look at top 3 products only. So I'm going to be working with this top end function, and I'll say, hey, I want a table which should have 3 rows, and it should be working on the products table right here. And basis the top total sales calculation, I want the top 3 rows to be calculated. So this particular top end function is going to give me 3 rows from the products table sorted in the order of total sales. So the top 1 sales, top 2 sales, and top 3 sales. And this particular filter is going to be combined with the year filter and the quarter filter, and only retain the 3 products and then give that to me right here. Now, if I just happen to be pressing enter and dragging this measure off to my visualization, you're going to see that I get this particular number. Let's just also format this number. All right, once you get the top products of, let's say, whatever quarter, the next obvious question is that, hey, what products are these? Like, can I just maybe take a look at the product? So the obvious next step is going to be, you'll be trying to drag and drop the product key or the product name, whatever that is, in the pivot table. So let's just go ahead and go to the product column right here and drag the product key right off to my visual. So I'm just going to go right here and drag the product key. And I'm going to take the product key in the rows right here and expand that pivot table. Now, obviously, I was expecting to see the top 3 products only, but I don't see them. I get to see the sales of all the 3 products. Now, this is where you again have to understand the filter context. Now, let me just go ahead and open up the measure real quick and help you understand what's going on. So if you now take a look at this particular cell, you again have to think about what filters are applied on this cell. There are 3 filters applied on the cell: year 2019, quarter 2, and product key. And these 2 filters are coming off from my calendar table. This particular filter is coming off from my sales table. And all of these filters are first going to come and filter your sales table, which is where the total sales is calculated. Now, once that is done, then you particularly apply this particular filter, top 3 products and total sales. Now, the problem with this particular filter is that if in your sales table, you have only filtered one single product, then that particular product would obviously be in the top 3 products because you just have one product, right? That's as simple as that. So every product happens to be the top product, and therefore you have the sales present right here. And that's why this calculation gives you the answer for every single product. But that's not quite what I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and say that, hey, I would want to keep the year filter and the quarter filter. These 2 filters are good. I would want to apply them, but I don't somehow want to apply this particular filter. That means cancel out the filter, consider all of the products, and then find out that which is the top product. So I'm just going to go ahead to this particular measure and say that, hey, I'm trying to remove, or let's say use the all function, all, and then I'll use the product key column right here. So I'm trying to remove or consider all the possible products in this particular column. These two filters are good, but I would want to override this particular filter and design my own custom filter. Now, if I happen to press enter, you're going to see that I get this number 13320. Now, I'm not even sure if this is the right number or not. So I'm just going to go ahead and take the first number, the second number, and the third number, because these three numbers are sorted in the descending order, and add them up real quick in Excel. And you can see that the number actually tallies up. So these three, which are the numbers right here, are actually the top three products, and I am actually getting the sales of the top three products. But the problem is still not solved, because I get to see the sales of the top three products against all the products. And that is something that I don't want it to happen. I just want to see that what are my top three selling products. And I don't really want to have the sales present against the rest of the products. So how do I actually do that? This is where I'm going to be starting to design my own clashing filter context. That means I would want the clash to happen, but I want that to be a controlled clash. Let me help you understand what do I mean by that. So I'm saying that, hey, the top three is considering all of the products, fine. But while you're considering all of the products, please also allow the first product filter to come in. That means once you have built this particular table, which is where you have the list of all the products and their sales values, I would want you to take this particular sales value and apply that as a filter right here. If that value, which is 222, exists in the top three, it will filter down to only that value and calculate the sales for that. If it doesn't exist, this table will obviously become empty and there will be no value remaining. So how do I apply that filter? There are two ways of applying it. What you can do is you can actually wrap this around in the KEEAFILTERS function, and that is one way to do that. If I just close the bracket and press enter, you're going to be seeing that, hey, now I retain all the top products, but I also apply this particular products filter. That filters down to only one single product in the top three, and that actually gives me the top one product, top two product, and the top three product. That's one way to go about it. The other way to go about it is that you don't use the KEEAFILTERS function, but you use the values function instead. So if I just go ahead and write the values function, which is values, and I say, hey, I'm trying to find out that what product is this. So I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, the products table and the product key column, which is this particular column, close the bracket and press enter. You're going to see that it results in the same value right here as well. Now, what the values function is doing is that it is just going to this particular column, picking up the first filter, removing the duplicates, and only one product is selected. And then it just passes on that filter to the sales table along with this particular filter. And that's how I have been able to control how much of filter do I want to pass on to the sales table. Now, what's going to happen is that if you remove the total sales calculation, it is only going to show you the top three products in every single quarter. So if I just go ahead and remove the total sales calculation, I can now literally take a look at what are my top three products in every single quarter right here. As you can see that when we started off with filter context initially with a single table, the concept was very, very easy to understand because there was not much complexity involved. But as we graduated to more complex scenarios, which is where we had to work with multiple tables, we had to do the reverse filter, we had to create a virtual table, we had to design clashing filters and design our own filter context, the concept became very, very hard and very dense to understand. Solely because you all have to imagine filter context being applied into your head. There is no place where you can take a look at the tables being created and the filters being applied. Once you understand the three-stage DAX calculation process, which is the filters being applied first, the data getting shortened, on the shortened data in stage 2, the calculation happens only on the shortened data, and then the result is passed back to the visual and the third stage. Once you understand this three-stage process, you can then start to peel out DAX calculations one layer at a time and then design your own complicated calculations or even debug calculations and understand somebody else's calculations as well. All right, I hope you like this video on filter context. If you would want to watch the most important DAX functions that you have to master before getting bogged down with all the other functions in DAX, I would highly recommend that you watch the next video. I'll see you in that one. Bye.